Fisetin is a flavonoid found in many fruits and vegetables. Fisetin has many benefits. Here are three major ones. First, Fisetin is a Senolytic that extends health and lifespan. A study from The Lancet, 10 flavonoids including Resveratrol, Quercetin, curcumin tested. According to the result, Fisetin was the most potent senolytic. Second, Fisetin's role as an antioxidant. Fisetin works as an antioxidant by protecting cells from free radical damage. It also exhibits anti-inflammatory properties by turning off pathways that promote inflammation and decreasing the production of inflammatory compounds. Third, Fisetin mimics calorie restriction, promote autophagy and increases the levels of AMPK and Sirtuin. Let's listen to what Dr. Sandra Kaufmann and Dr. David Sinclair talk about Fisetin.
Yeah, so Fisetin is amazing. Fisetin is just, it does incredibly well. Like, it's not a monster standout except for senescent cells, but it just does incredibly well in every category. You're going to kill me. I don't really remember all the specifics about it. I can tell you it does help with your mitochondrial transition pore. It is a free radical scavenger. It just does something amazing in each category. Reduces fat collections, for example. But the senescent cell is extremely important. And just as a recoup of what senescent cells are, just in case people don't know, some people call them zombie cells. I call them grumpy old man cells. And the reason I do that, because you take a perfectly normal, happy, functioning cell, and it undergoes DNA damage. That's not uncommon because every cell every day has about 10 to the fourth to 10 to the fifth DNA errors per cell per day. So it's a ton. But the cell then goes into a state of quiescence where it just sort of sits there to repair itself. And if it can, great, right? And if it can't, three things happen. One, it becomes apoptotic and dies, which I call it like the polite way out, right? It's not no harm, no fuss, boom, you're dead, fine. Or two, it becomes cancerous, which is not so good. Or three, it becomes senescent. And a senescent cell changes the morphology. It becomes flatter, more globular. The inner organelles don't function as well. The mitochondria become distorted. Everything sort of becomes distorted. You get more protein accumulations, and everything is named after sort of the cell. So there's the senescence associated blank, like whatever it is. And one of the big things it does, it has the senescence associated secretory activity, and it lets out just a zillion negative cytokines. So it's extraordinarily inflammatory. And as you get older and as you have pathologic tissues, you get more and more senescent cells. Your immune system, when you are younger, like the natural killer cells come along and they get rid of these senescent cells. But as you have more senescent cells and as your immune system itself becomes senescent, the number sort of skyrockets over the course of time. And studies have demonstrated that if you can get rid of your senescent cells, you're just going to do extraordinarily better. Historically, the big treatments have been quercetin and dasatinib. Quercetin, of course, is in book one, and these studies were just coming out when I wrote it. So it was an inkling, but certainly nothing solid. And as it turns out, different senescent cells are different, right? If it's a fat cell versus a bone cell versus this cell versus that cell, and different agents can get rid of different types of senescent cells. So it turns out that quercetin and fisetin are very similar in the cell types that they can get rid of, which is kind of nice. The big studies, of course, use danacitab and the quercetin, and they demonstrate that it's sort of like you need to have high quantities in your bloodstream for like 2 to 3 days, and then you can, go back to normal doses for, a few months. And as you get older, of course, you're going to have more cells, so you want to do a little bit more frequently. But Fisetin has proved to be just extremely good at getting rid of a certain cell type of senescent cells, which is why you talk about the bolus therapy and then the intermittent therapy. The daily smaller dose is just for the side effects of the mitochondrial health and all of the other wonderful things it does. But the senescent cells definitely need a high dose intermittently.
Senescent cells are old cells that stop dividing and put out inflammatory molecules called cytokines. And they've been shown in animals and some studies in humans that if you get rid of them, kill them off, the body recovers and heals and becomes more youthful. And that includes treating metabolic disease and high blood sugar as well. And Jim Kirkland, who's at the Mayo Clinic, is the world's expert in this, and he's running human clinical trials. So he's a friend of mine, so we're up to speed on that. And what he's shown is that there are plant molecules and some drugs that work to kill those senescent cells and not so much normal cells. Of course, you don't want to touch the normal cells. There are drugs, there's navitoclax, there's dasatinib, but the ones that are available to the regular consumer are quercetin, which is, again, a plant polyphenol, similar in shape to resveratrol. Another one, I call it Fisetin. And it's also a plant molecule. These two are shown to either prevent the senescent cells from secreting those inflammatory molecules. That's called a senomorphic. Or in the case of Fisetin, it's actually can kill those senescent cells. And there's a group at University of Minnesota, Laura Niederhofer and Paul Robbins have shown that if you give Fisetin to mice, they actually live longer by about 10% by my recollection. But what's interesting about it, it also works if you give it to the mice midway through their lifespan to extend their lifespan. And the other thing that's not very well known, but because it goes back a number of years, but in 2003, my lab published a Nature paper that showed that resveratrol activates Sirtuin, but in that group was also quercetin and Fisetin. And so those three are ones that I take regularly, not just to work on senescent cells, but they also activate Sirtuin, so you get this potential double benefit. But overall, I think that Senolytics are really interesting and can be really useful to prevent that type of aging, which is caused by inflammation.